Hello Viesas, welcome back to my channel, or if you're new here, hi, welcome. My name is Brenda. I go by Beyond Belleza. If you would like to join my little community of Bellezas, all you have to do is subscribe down below and turn on your post notifications so you do not miss a new video. Also, do give this video a huge thumbs up if you do end up enjoying it whatsoever. Let's go ahead and just get right into today's video. Alright guys, so I hope you guys are ready for today's video, that you guys are cozy, that you have your snacks ready, anything else that you need to watch today at whatever time that you're watching. As you guys can tell by the title, obviously I am going to be reading you guys some encounters with La Llorona that I found on Reddit. So I'm excited to do this one because I didn't want to just do a video on the Legend of La Llorona itself, because I feel like a lot of you guys already know it, but I will be giving a summarized version of the legend. I didn't want to, as I said, I didn't want to dedicate a whole video to it because I didn't feel like it was necessary, because it's pretty self-explanatory, or not even self-explanatory, but just right straight to the point. Everybody in like the Hispanic community has been told this story or has had somebody in their family have an encounter with La Llorona, so it is not new to us. And I do know that I have some non-Spanish speakers in my audience, so I know that some of you might have just heard it or probably saw that movie, Curse of La Llorona, which we're not going to talk about because it was honestly an awful movie, and James Wan should have stayed in his lane, because I don't know why he tried to make it a part of The Conjuring, but I was like, sir, what was that? I do not even remember it. And I think I like fell asleep, like I was falling asleep throughout it. I honestly can't even remember watching it. It was like a fever dream to me. But yes, we all know that somebody in our family has some kind of story that has to do with La Llorona. You know, your mom, your dad, your tia, your tío, whoever it may be, has probably at some point told you a scary story about La Llorona and how they heard her at night or whatever. But to summarize the legend for those of you who are not familiar with it, it is basically about a woman who fell in love with this rich man and they end up getting married. And the other thing I wanted to note really quickly is that there is a variety of different versions of the legends. There's two main ones that I know of, and there's also a lot of different interpretations of this legend from pre-Hispanic times and also from different regions of the world that have similar stories about a wailing woman in a white dress. It is not a legend that is just based in Mexico. A lot of people have their own renditions of it. Is that a word? Did I just make that up? I don't know. But oh, what the heck was that? I don't know. But yeah, so the two that I know, the first one is that she marries a rich man and they have two kids, and then she ends up seeing him with another woman, and in a blind rage she goes and gets her two kids, takes them to the river and drowns them, and in immediate regret she is consumed by the guilt of it and she ends up drowning herself as well. Like, Miss Girl was not okay in the head. And the other version, it ultimately ends with the same thing, that she ends up drowning her kids, but this one is because her kids are illegitimate, because she gets with this man who is a married man and he has his own family, his own wife, and he ends up having kids with her. And because she doesn't want him to end up taking them for some reason, she ends up, you know, taking their lives in order to prevent their dad from taking them and having his wife take care of them, if that makes sense. I don't know why I took the longest way to say it possible, but that's basically the gist of it. It's just a woman who ends up regretting her actions of killing her two kids. So it has been interpreted in various different ways. People change it up. As I said, with that James Wan movie, it's about like a caseworker and that Llorona is trying to kill the kids. I don't know. As I said, I totally forgot what the plot of the movie is. I just know that they changed it a lot and I was so confused because I was like, why why is this a part of it? And then they tried to tie it, as I said, to the Conjuring universe, which was really weird as well. Anyway, now that I got that part out of the way, I can go ahead and read you guys the Reddit stories that I found of encounters with La Llorona, which are always super intriguing to me because everybody has a different way of telling the story or a different scenario that they were in. My mom has one of when she used to stay at my grandma's rancho in Juchitlan, Mexico, which you guys already know. I talk about Juchitlan all the time because I always got stuff going on there. And I have been prying at my mom to tell me more stories, but she doesn't have any more, and I know people still constantly ask me for them, but I'm just like, if she don't got no more, she don't got no more. But she's been like talking to family members, and then whenever she brings it up, she's like, hey, have you ever had like anything weird happen in Mexico, like any stories that you have? So then she can relate them to me, but so far we have had no luck in doing so. So for now, I'm just gonna find them, you know, on the internet or whatever. But let me tell you guys briefly the story of my mom. She used to go with her sisters. She had 3 other sisters at the time, and my grandpa would take them to go see my great grandma, her grandma, and they would stay at her rancho. And she had like just like a small little house with a bunch of land and a bunch of farm animals, and they had no electricity, and they had to go to a well to get water. It was like that kind of rancho, you know. So when they would go, they had to take lanterns out everywhere, and they had the bathroom outside, typical sort of setting for a rancho. And my mom says that they did have like neighbors in the surrounding areas, and she says that there could be like a rational explanation for what they were hearing, because they said that earlier in the day they had heard a couple fighting. You could hear them because it's all quiet in the farmland. Basically, you can hear everything from quite a distance, especially because no one's watching TV or anything like that out here. There's nothing to distract yourself with. So they said they heard that in the beginning of the day, and then later at night they were all sleeping, and then my mom got up because she had to go to the bathroom, and she was trying to like set up the little lantern, and then at a distance she started hearing like somebody crying, and she didn't hear the typical like ay mis hijos sort of thing. She just heard a woman crying, and she was like sobbing like hysterically. And my mom got really scared, and then she had her little lantern. She was getting ready to go to the bathroom, as I said. Because she was hearing this crying, she decided, nope, I'm gonna go back into bed. And so she turned it off, and she was laying in bed, and she said that it seemed to be getting closer, like somebody was walking around the area. And her rational explanation for this was that one of the neighbors, probably the couple that was fighting, like it was probably the husband and wife, she was probably out walking and like crying by herself, because I guess she could have been really like upset and she didn't want to be in the house with her husband. But she said that the first thing that came into mind, because everybody tells the legend about La Llorona around Mexico and everybody knows it, that's the first thing that she thought about. At the same time, as soon as she woke up her sister to be like, do you hear that crying? She said that the crying stopped, and that, well, it didn't like stop immediately, it just sounded like really, really far away now. And by the time that her sister woke up, her sister was like, I don't hear anything. And then my mom is so funny because she goes, pero mi hermana está bien sorda, or she's like deaf because she doesn't hear anything. Every time, like when their mom, my grandma, would be yelling their name, she wouldn't hear it. She would be like knocked out. So she was saying she was trying to like wake her up, and by the time she woke up there was no more crying, and my mom was like, now I look stupid. So that's basically that little story. My mom's like, I don't know whether it was La Llorona or not, but that still scared me. Yeah, I would be scared too, because I had not a Llorona story, but we have woods in front of our apartments. Like, you go up the hill in the parking lot, and in front of it there's just like wooded area, and then there's the highway like on the other side. And sometimes homeless people go and sleep in that wooded area, which is why they've knocked down the trees a lot of the time, so people will stop doing that. They even put like big rocks there. And there was a lady outside when my sister and my brother were walking the dog. We're dog sitting, and she was like yelling. I could hear her up here too. And she was like saying random things and like making weird noises. And even that, like, I know that it could be just like a person, like a homeless person over there. It still scared me. So I understand, Mom. I feel like I went on a really long tangent, but I hope that was still entertaining. But let me pull up my Reddit account. Okay, so this one is by the user DJ Underdog 85, and it's titled "She is Real, a La Llorona story." Okay. It says, "This happened to me when I was about 11 years old. It was the 90s, and I have lived my whole life in El Paso, Texas. The culture is rich in folklore and religious beliefs. Many Hispanic families have stories of the paranormal. One legend popular is the legend of the Weeping Woman, aka La Llorona. The legend of La Llorona is Spanish for the Weeping Woman, has been a part of Hispanic culture in the Southwest since the days of conquistadores. The tall, thin spirit is said to be blessed with a natural beauty and long, flowing black hair. Wearing a white gown, she roams the rivers and creeks, wailing into the night and searching for children to drag, screaming to a watery grave." I don't know why I said it like that. No one really knows when the legend of La Llorona began or from where it originated, though the tales vary from source to source, as I said. The common thread is that she is the spirit of a doomed mother who drowned her children and now spends eternity searching for them in rivers and lakes. One night, it was like any other night, and I lived in a trailer with my mom and dad. My youngest brother was staying with my aunt this night, and I fell asleep watching Jay Leno as usual. And when I woke up, I was on the sofa in my living room. The time was 4 a.m., which illuminated from the stove in the kitchen. The television was off, and normally I had light on, but this time it was pitch black. I woke up and I heard a horrible screaming that was coming from far in the distance. The screaming was coming from a ditch that was a few feet away from my home. I heard it and I thought I was hearing things. I asked myself, am I dreaming? Then I started to hear the animals outside howling and whimpering. These animals that I speak of are cats and dogs. As the screaming got closer, the animals continued to cry. The screaming was something I had never experienced ever before. It sounded like I was in a big hallway and a woman was screaming her guts out down that hallway. Then in all the screaming, I started to make out words. These words being said by whoever this was at 4 a.m. screaming their guts out shocked me. The woman said, "Ay, mis hijos." Oh, my children, that's what it translates to. Not as creepy. In a huge panic, I quickly got up from the sofa and ran to the kitchen, which was right next to where I was asleep. I turned on the closest light and looked around. The screaming didn't stop. In fact, the screaming only got louder and closer. I questioned my sanity at that moment. Was I going crazy or hearing things? Then I thought to myself, this is real and the animals are responding to it in a negative way. So I did what any other 11-year-old boy would do in that moment like this. I ran to my mom and dad's room. I reached for my mom and shook her awake wildly. She woke up slowly, and to my amazement, the screaming faded away as she woke up. I thought to myself, what the heck is going on? I told my mother, "Mom, do you hear that screaming and crying lady?" My mom was half asleep and she said, "Go back to sleep. It's most likely just your imagination." I told her, "No, this is real. Please listen. Don't you hear her?" My mom quickly just said, "You are dreaming, so go back to sleep. It's going to be okay." Damn, Mom. By then, the screaming had faded long away, like whoever was screaming knew that an adult was awake. I was terrified as I returned to the living room and quickly turned on the television as I left most of the lights on as well. I didn't go back to sleep until the sun came up. I couldn't believe what I heard and witnessed. I was treated like a crazy person whenever I told my story. It got so bad that I kept the experience to myself. To this day, I don't care what people think of my experience. I know what I heard. A couple of years later, it happened to me again, but that's a story for another time. That was creepy. I would believe you. It's always the parents that are always like, you're just imagining things, just go back to sleep, and they don't even bother to like check. But I mean, I get it. You wouldn't want to scare them even more by feeding into whatever it is. But if it was real and you were hearing it too, well, I don't know, what would you even do? You couldn't even really do anything. You could just be like, well, hopefully she doesn't come over here, you know? I'm getting really hot. I'm like sweating under my legs. Holy shit. I need an AC unit stat. Okay, let me get the other one ready. I'm gonna skip to the part where he talks about his experience with La Llorona, because the story, he like explains the entire story of what La Llorona is. So this one is by the user AZ Redbird Arizona. I told you that story to tell you this one. He's referring to what La Llorona is. I was out running about a month ago, as I often do. I run late at night, around 10 or so, and I run near the canals that are all over Phoenix. I take my American Bulldog with me so that no one messes with me. The path I take when I go running is very well lit, and it is right next to the canals and houses. It always felt safe until the night I saw her. I was running with my dog as usual. I was listening to my iPod and tracking my mileage. I started to see something in the distance, about a quarter mile away. It looked like a person under one of the street lamps that light the path at night. I thought nothing of it at first because I often see people when I run. As I got closer, I began to notice that this person wasn't moving. Just a silhouette under the light. The closer I got, the more the silhouette started to take shape. When I was about 50 feet away from it, I stopped. My first thought was that it was a homeless person. Same. Or this was some sort of prank. My dog started to whimper, then growl, then whimper, then growl again. I had never seen him do that before. I looked at her. I could tell it was a woman. Something about her deeply unsettled me. Then I got the feeling in my stomach that something wasn't quite right, and that I needed to get out of there. I couldn't see her face. Her hair was long and black. It was covering it. She looked like she was wearing a short black dress, which was odd because it was 60 degrees that night. She was tall, taller than I had first estimated. She was thin, and her arms and legs seemed to be a tad too long for her body. She was just standing under the streetlight. I took my headphones out because I was going to ask if she was alright. Damn you, brave. Before I could ask, my ears were filled with a very fast Spanish being spoken in a whisper. It was raspy. The voice filled my head. She raised one long arm at me and extended her index finger. It looked more like a long tree root than a finger. I had had enough. My dog sensed my fear. I took a step back. She took a step forward. I paused for what seemed like a solid minute, but it was probably a few seconds. That's when I started to hear the crying. It started off as a wail, then grew into a full scream. When I looked back, she was gone. I ran back to my neighborhood along the main road. The entire time, I was trying to make sense of what had just happened, and whether or not someone was fucking with me. The entire run home, I could feel eyes on me. I entered my neighborhood, and the feeling was still there. I was dreading running back to my house because there are areas that aren't well lit. I decided to sprint the last 0.2 miles. As I was doing this, I happened to look down a cul-de-sac that had one light at the end. Yes, she was there. Her silhouette clear as day. She had not only followed me and kept pace with me, but she had also beaten me to my neighborhood. My dog pulled. We made it to the front doorstep. I opened the door, ran in, and slammed it. I took a shower and tried to forget about everything. I locked every door in the house and the door to my bedroom. My dog slept at the foot of my bed that night, and I left the TV on. I drifted to sleep around 3 a.m. The next morning, I woke up and discovered that somehow I had acquired a large scratch that ran down the whole of my bicep. It would eventually scar. A few days after that, I was talking with my neighbor, as I often do. I told him about what happened. He said this, quote, "I know what that was. The best advice I can give you is to leave her alone. She marked you and will leave you alone. She marks the ones she doesn't like and takes the ones she does." What the fuck? He told me something similar had happened to the person who lived down the street from us. It ended up driving him crazy. He said that it all started with a picture his niece drew him. He wouldn't say any more than that. He kept telling me to leave it be. I called my friend Justin after that. I couldn't let this go. How could I? I had been followed by something and was marked. This kind of thing doesn't just happen to people. My buddy Justin's family is Mexican, and he also loves this sort of thing. I described what happened and asked if it was La Llorona, the lady from the story. He told me that it was possible, as there were many vengeful spirits like this. He told me the same story I wrote out above, except with a few key distinctions. The lady was never pregnant, but she was beautiful. She fell in love with a nobleman's son who played with her heart, promising to marry her, but instead married another woman. The woman, heartbroken, became depressed. She began to see her beauty as a curse. She took a knife and disfigured her face. He told me that no one saw her face from then on because she would cover her face with her long black hair. When he told me this, I thought back to my encounter and my blood turned to ice. The legend finishes that she longed for someone to love her for her heart, not for her beauty. This didn't happen, and she eventually drowned herself. She was cursed, though, and now wanders looking for someone who will love her. She will never be satisfied. Her hatred has twisted her. Some people she appears to as a monster, and some she appears to as a beautiful woman. Those she appears to as a beautiful woman will be driven mad with affection for her, and those are the ones she's chosen to love her. Those are the ones who can see her for her and don't see her as a monster. I got off lucky, I guess. This should have been the end of it. This should have been where the story ends. It doesn't. I became so curious, I went to my neighbors who lived down the street. I had to know what became of the other man who saw her. When I knocked, an old woman answered. I told her that this would sound weird, but that I needed her help. I asked her about the man who used to live here. It turns out it was her ex-husband. I cautiously asked her if she knew anything about a woman in black. She looked at me in a funny way and asked me if I had seen her. I told her I had. She gave me the same advice my neighbor had given me, to leave this alone. I told her that was no longer an option. She sighed and told me to come with her. We went into her attic and she gave me 2 large boxes. She said that everything I wanted to know was in there. This was apparently all that her ex-husband had left in this apartment when he disappeared. She told me to read everything. If I still wanted to look for her after that, then I was a fool. I took the boxes home and spent a weekend going through everything. There were journals, home movies, drawings, and other things I'm not sure about. This crazy guy seemed to be in love with this woman. He was obsessed with her. This is where things get really weird. He started taping himself with a video camera. I watched most of it. He kept the lights mostly off. He said she likes the darkness better. He only had on 1 or 2 lights at a time. From the looks of his new home, he was living in a cheap apartment. One video in particular was set up in a bathroom. He had grown a beard by this point. In this video, he took out a razor and instead of shaving with it, he removed the blade and started cutting his face with it. He took blood from his face and drew a heart on the mirror. He looked over his shoulder into the darkness and said, "I love you too." Then the whispering started and the camera cut off. The last tape was the weirdest by far. It starts off with him sitting down at his dining table, which was a fold-down card table. He had a large smile on his face. That's all this tape showed for 3 minutes. It's him sitting and smiling in the dark. His eyes seemed to follow something around the room. He nodded occasionally. The light above the table eventually went out, at which point the camera turned to night vision. He was still smiling. Then a shadow appeared behind him. Long root-like fingers found their way down his chest until her palm found its place on his shoulder. He closed his eyes and his smile widened. The last part of this video made my head hurt and my stomach lurch. Mi amor, I heard the voice say on the video before the camera shut off. They never found his body. That night, I packed his stuff up. The next morning, I returned his things to his ex-wife. I have stopped looking for her. I wonder if she ever thinks about me. That is so scary. That turned into something more than La Llorona. That was so weird. Let's unpack this. Okay, so obviously he reached out to his friend who couldn't tell him whether it was La Llorona or not. So it turned out to be some other sort of vengeful spirit. I'm guessing this guy's not Hispanic since he had just learned about the Llorona folklore. He ended up being infatuated with it. So whatever the spirit was did actually probably want him, but since he went and returned his stuff and he was like, no more of this, probably let go of him too. I am so hot right now. Sorry, I can't concentrate. I gotta fan myself real quick with my notes. Oh my god, it's too hot to be in front of this lamp right now. That was a really creepy story. I want to see them tapes. Just kidding, no I don't. I'm so scared. I would not want to watch them. I'd toss them in the river. I'd be like, here you go, bitch. You're not gonna get me today. But yeah, that was really, really creepy. I really enjoy listening to people talk about with their encounters with La Llorona. And that's probably going to be the last one that I read, or just the two of those, because they were really long stories and I feel like I don't want this video to be too long. But yeah, as I said, I love talking about it. I love swapping stories with people, which I haven't gotten to do in a really long time. I remember when I was in high school, we would do this sort of thing where we would just talk about scary stuff and just little experiences that me and my friends would have, or things that would happen in the school and whatever. Because in our old school that was like really, really old, they would have like all of these stories that they would make up about different sections of the school, but nobody could really confirm that they were real or not. It was just like things to scare each other. Yeah, I remember I used to have a lot of Hispanic friends in California, and we would talk about La Llorona all the time, and we would scare each other by saying it. We'd be like, ay, mis hijos, and saying that she was gonna appear to us at night and so on and so forth, and just kind of had like fun with the folklore, which is why a lot of these myths or legends get made up, is just to scare people or scare each other or have something to talk about, because people really get intrigued when it comes to telling scary stories. Like, it's something that I feel like in Hispanic culture we do a lot. At the end of the night, you know, when everyone's still awake at like 3 in the morning, we just start talking about scary encounters we've had, and we all sit around in the living room. Something my family used to do too. La Llorona was always one of them, and as much as I say that it's overplayed and it's overtold and everyone always talks about it, everyone has made a video about La Llorona, and I'm just like, do I really want to make a video on it? But I have had people tell me to talk about it, and I'm like, okay, fine, you know. It doesn't hurt to talk about it, and people are always interested no matter how many times you rerun the same story over and over through different platforms. People still will watch it and see what you specifically have to say about it. So I hope that you guys did enjoy listening to those encounters and just my little tangents here and there about my own experiences or my mom's. But yeah guys, with that being said, that is going to be it for today's video. Now before I do end it, today's comment shout out goes to this person right here. Thank you so much for leaving a nice comment, and as always, if you want to be the next comment shout out, all you have to do is leave me a nice comment down below, of course. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really do appreciate every single one of you. I love you guys so much. Don't forget to stay safe and be kind. I will see you guys in my next one. Bye bye.